Good morning, Triunium friends, and welcome to this week's edition of Patio Ponderings. I'm Pastor Sue, and I'm so glad you decided to join me today. You'll notice that my patio is the front of the sanctuary in the church for a couple reasons. One, we are just recovering from one of the biggest snowfalls we've had here this season, but also because I want to draw attention to our altar and our paraments, our decorations, if you will. And have you noticed that the color is purple? And purple is the color for the season of Lent. And that's what I've been thinking about. Yesterday was Ash Wednesday, which is the beginning to the season of Lent. But I think that over time, a lot of the traditions around Lent have become conflated with the season itself. And maybe it's helpful to think about, at its simplest terms, what is Lent? So let's start with the simplest of terms in Lent. Lent is the season of the church year. You'll remember that the church has kind of its own calendar that follows some of the different events in the life of Jesus and in the life of the church. And this is the season in which we focus on the upcoming event of the crucifixion and the resurrection. It is a time of preparation for that event, and that event is the core story of our faith. It is what makes us Christian. It is what makes us followers of Jesus, is putting our belief into what Jesus does, the greatest act Jesus does in that story. It is the gospel itself, that Jesus loved the world so much, he gave up his life for us so that we might have life. So in its simplest terms, that's what Lent is that time ahead. It is 40 days, I might have mentioned that, but it does not include Sundays. There are some deeper understandings about what this time of Lent is. We consider it a time of repentance, and that's where things get uncomfortable and hard. We often have kind of a sense that this season is much more serious and dark even. We tend to associate it more with the crucifixion and death, and so there's a lot of that rolled into it. But let's have a little Greek lesson, shall we? The word for repentance is metanoia, and in Greek it simply means to turn around. And so the emphasis in Lent then is to reorient ourselves, to turn around, to kind of take a look at ourselves and our lives and see if we are indeed oriented toward Jesus or toward something or someone else, or simply more toward the ways of the world. Now, many denominations observe Lent and walk through Lent in very different ways. For some, it is very disciplined, and some of the practices associated with it might include fasting, daily prayer, extra donations. Some denominations don't really do a lot to observe it at all, and there's a big spectrum in between. So as we think about those practices during Lent, we want to think about which practices, which traditions, which things we do actually serve the purpose of Lent, which things help us put our focus on Jesus, and which things help us kind of do some of that introspection and reflection on our own lives. And yeah, that is hard work. So there is a bit more of a solemn and serious nature or tenor to this season. But I think that we can also pay attention to just what God is doing in the world. And that can also mean it's a time for simply looking at what God is up to around us. And that might be in terms of creation and even points of joy or goodness. The word Lent comes from a German word which means spring. And so we are looking forward in Lent to new life. So what do you think? What kinds of things have you thought about in terms of Lent? If you grew up in a church, how did your church observe Lent? What does it mean to you now today? I kind of think, in its most simplest terms, when we think about the greatest command to love God and love our neighbor, this is a time when we really focus on the loving God. And to love God, we need to be in relationship with God in and through Jesus. And so this is the time that is our emphasis. As always, I love to hear what you have to say, and I hope I will see you on Sunday. Bye.